Hello, everyone. I am your host, Alejandro Colindres. Welcome to Series 2 of the podcast, The Road to Champagne, 13 Tested Principles to Drive Your Career to Success. This podcast series will benefit professionals that have room for growth in their career, especially young professionals. In Series 2, we are talking to professionals with brilliant careers in different stages of their journey to find out how the 13 principles have helped them. You can see the framework of the 13 principles in the website roadtochampagne.com. We all have different journeys in our career, different starting points, ending points, detours, obstacles, opportunities, etc. Some of those are caused by factors we don't control, and many of those are caused by factors we do control. The factors we control are encompassed in the 13 principles of the Road to Champagne. You can control your mindset, you can define and create your professional brand, and you can decide how proactive you want to be in managing your career. We covered each principle individually in each episode during Series 1. In Series 2, which starts today, we will do something different. We will explore the holistic application of the 13 principles and how that has impacted the career journey of professionals in different fields and in different stages of their journey. The only thing my Series 2 guests have in common is that I know them, of course, and I met them in different stages of my career, and they are here because I believe they have great insights to share with us. To kick off, I am very excited to be joined by Cliff Goins IV. Cliff is an experienced finance, operations, and strategy executive. Currently, he is Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Emotomy, a Northern Trust company. Cliff was the Senior Vice President of Strategy for Asset Management at Northern Trust, and before that, he was COO of the company's Fund and Managed Accounts Group. Cliff has grown in the finance world from his first role as Senior Financial Analyst at American Express, and held several senior positions in his journey. He studied accounting at Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University and has an MBA from Kellogg, where we met. When not in the office or on family time, he neurotically feeds his tennis obsession, watching, coordinating, playing, wishing he was better than he is. Cliff, welcome to the Road to Champagne podcast. How are you?
Alejandro, so good to see you again. Thanks for having me on.
I know, it's been so long, right?
It's been many years. So glad to connect.
That's great. Yeah, we go back for 22 years, actually, when we started our MBA. So pretty long time.
22 years makes us sound old.
Yeah, I guess we are getting a little old, man. Yes. All right, let's just say we're getting a little wiser and experienced. How's that?
There we go.
more interesting. Awesome. So thank you for being here, Cliff. So tell us a little bit about your career. Where did it start? How did it evolve? And where are you now?
My official start was in an accounting finance rotational program at American Express Financial Advisors, which is now Ameriprise. Mm-hmm. 2 weeks in, I was deathly afraid that I chose the wrong major. I was knee deep in journal entries and doing bank runs for bank deposits. And I was doing a version of the same thing every day. Oh, no. And I thought, if this is professional life in accounting, I'm out. Now, fortunately, go ahead.
I have to confess that I'm not a fan of accounting, man, precisely for those reasons. And I did force myself to take some accounting classes at Kellogg just to get over that fear and aversion, because obviously, in business, you need to understand it. But a couple of introductory classes, and that was it for me.
Well, they say accounting is the language of business. I actually ended up choosing accounting because I took an accounting class in high school, and it was the cross section of business and math, and I knew I liked both. So that was my rationale going in. I had no idea what the work was, but it served me well having that foundation for sure. Yes. But luckily, my next rotation in that program was in kind of the financial analysis realm. And that's kind of where I found my sea legs. And it was great. Had a great time, good mentors. And I actually was getting promoted every year. Nice. But I was getting pigeonholed as a financial analyst. Mm. And as we've discussed before, I like a lot of variety. And so my way of kind of breaking free was to start looking at business schools. And so, obviously that's where we met, right?
It's a great platform to change careers, right?
Great platform to change careers. And quite frankly, just get exposed to all the different types of opportunities you have as a business person. And so, in business school, I became very enamored with private equity and entrepreneurship. I had a great professor and mentor, Steve Rogers. He was my Sherpa.
Oh, yeah. I loved him.
Love Steve. And eventually that led to me starting a company with a partner a few years after graduation. And it was a, spectacular flame out. But it it really was. But it turned into an acquisition of a small retail business, which was a little Christian store on the south side of Chicago that was targeted at the African-American market.
Awesome.
And so it was quite an adventure. We had what I would call MBA-sized dreams. We thought we were going to build this national chain of urban bookstores, but convincing store owners to sell to us proved to be very challenging, very elusive, much more than we anticipated. But I like to call that period of my career my second MBA. I feel like I paid for my second MBA with that experience.
I'm sure there was a lot of valuable lessons learned at that time.
A lot of lessons learned. Personally, I feel like there are lessons I would not have learned if I had gone kind of a traditional corporate path. Yeah. When you're forced to be the accountant and the marketer and the salesperson and the shopkeeper and the person cleaning up and the vendor manager, you just get a whole different perspective. And, the liaison to the bank and the liaison to the real estate company who you're leasing from. You just get a whole different perspective on business, for sure.
I bet.
Yeah. And so from there, I launched into what I call my get a real job season, which encompassed actually me working in private equity, eventually pivoting to one of our portfolio companies, and eventually landing at Northern Trust, where I am now. So I feel like I've had pretty much a very eclectic journey. And in step with that, I'm on my third job in 4.5 years within Northern Trust, which you kind of named at the beginning.
Yes.
And in a way, right now, the software that we run actually services financial advisors. And I started my career working for a financial advisory company. So in a way, it's a little bit of a full circle moment for me.
That's excellent. And Cliff, I like several things about your story. One is that I think there's a lesson to be learned in the sense that, for those people in our audience who are interested or passionate about starting their own business, I think there's a lesson there that even if they fail, their career can still be promising and successful, right? Like what happened to you. You found success not during that stage of your life, but it probably prepared you for what was coming. Hey, don't be afraid of starting your own business if that's what you're passionate about, or trying something risky and bold in your career. If it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. You're going to have many other options to continue towards a successful career. And then the second one is growth, right? That's what this whole series is about. It's about growing in your career. So that's part of the reason why you're here, Cliff, because we want to hear now the nitty gritty of how all that happened. So thank you for sharing. So of the 13 principles that we are using in the Road to Champagne, which would you say are the 3 that you believe have a strong impact in your success?
Like I told you before we started recording, I actually think this framework is pretty brilliant. So, of course, there were more than 3, but I'm going to stick to your question.
Yeah, sure.
Which I'm going to actually do in what I think was probably most in the order of what was most impactful for me. Yeah. So first up, I would go with your number 12, which is grab the wheel. I'm not sure, but I recognized early on that even with good mentors and strong advocates, which I did have at American Express, you have to ask for the assignments you want.
Yes.
You have to ask for the movements that you want. I was bold enough at the young age of 22 to write the CEO of this multi-billion-dollar company to tell him I thought it was a bad idea for him to eliminate the accounting finance rotational program because we were having budget comes.
Awesome.
And he actually reached back out to me and then basically decided not to make that part of the budget cuts.
Amazing.
And so, you can have impact from wherever you are.
For sure.
Yeah. So I think, grabbing the wheel and realizing that you are in control of your movements makes a whole lot of sense.
For sure.
Second up, I would go with number 6, which is know yourself. I am embarrassingly obsessed with psychology and sociology and anthropology and the like. So I've overindulged on self-assessments.
Excellent.
And I usually have my teams do StrengthsFinder or Myers-Briggs type indicator for 2 reasons. One, so they can understand themselves better, but second, so that we can work to understand each other better when we're working together as teammates.
Exactly.
So to me, I think like knowing your zone of genius, that's kind of how Gay Hendricks puts it. It's critical to unlocking, I would think, high levels of everyday fun and effectiveness. And so I think knowing yourself is a key component. I would say that entrepreneurship experience actually accelerated that for me, because I was able to also realize, okay, I really like this type of work. Ooh, I really hate this kind of work. Definitely need to hire somebody to do this kind of work, right? And so it made that very clear.
You definitely tested multiple functions and activities, right?
Yes. Like I know I'm a decent relationship person, like client relationship. In fact, that's one of the teams I have right now. But I'm not like a hardcore business development salesperson. And I know that. And I'm okay with that, right? I think the third one, last one, I would say is number 5, which is be adaptable. You know, what do you do when .coms bust and the recruiting landscape dries up? Well, you do a postgraduate internship, which is what I did when I was in that situation. What do you do when a city construction project shuts down the on-ramp to your retail store?
Oh, no.
During the holiday season. Well, first you cry, but next you reorient your business operation so you can live to fight another day.
Yeah.
And what do you do when your boss and the second most important person in your business resign on the same day? And so I'm working through that one right now. But a couple of first actions were really just to reassure our remaining teams and to keep delivering for our existing clients. And so you have to be adaptable on this road, because, you know, there are twists and turns, and some of them you can predict and most of them you can't.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that, Cliff. Those are 3 powerful principles for sure. And grabbing the wheel is key. I mean, you cannot delegate your career, your desires, your passions for somebody else to figure out how to take you from point A to point B. It's definitely on you. And just to add, to that point, where I am right now in my career was because I also chose to grab the wheel. And I'll give you a little bit of details of how this happened. I was in the corporate strategy team of the company that I am right now. And I started getting interested in another team because they are a high-performing team. They have great reputation. They seem to be doing everything well. So I approached the executive vice president of that team several years ago. And I said, hey, listen, I would love to have more exposure to your team and your projects. I would love to, work with you in whatever you think makes sense. And he invited me to participate in a project a couple months later. That project, led to another 4 projects. And then eventually I just moved into that team, right? But that's because I had my eyes set on that team for, the reasons that I valued and appreciated, and eventually worked my way in there, right? With the support of my, previous boss, in the company, of course, but you cannot just rely on, HR or your boss. That's my key message for that principle: to make things happen for you. You got to do them, just like you did, Cliff. So thank you for sharing that and the other 2 principles.
Yes.
Let me now ask you the flip side of that question. Which of the 13 principles did not or do not come naturally, perhaps forcing you to put extra effort and attention to them? And how have you improved on those principles?
Yes. The biggest one for me is actually number 10, increase power and influence.
Yeah.
So part of my zone of genius, which I referenced earlier, is problem solving. So typically when issues arise, which they do all the time in business, I'm a pretty quick reader of the situation and good paths to resolution. However, just because I've devised this or what I think is a good solution doesn't mean that the key decision makers are aligned. It doesn't mean that my other partners who may have other priorities or even competing agendas are aligned. And given that I really detest organization politics, the reality is you are only successful if you can figure out how to navigate those, right?
Exactly.
They're critical to your career advancement.
Yeah.
I would say just almost by immersion, because Northern Trust is such a relationship building type culture, I've improved in this regard, but I feel like I have a long way to go. One specific area where I can point to progress is having, the pre-meetings before the big meeting where you're having your side meetings to get alignment before you get in the room.
Socializing the idea,
Socializing the idea and the solution and getting feedback and at least having people feel like they contributed to the solution.
Yeah.
That's a big one for me because I haven't really had to do it before until I came to Northern. And that works pretty well. The one place where I still need work and actually, quite frankly, still get feedback around is just having the patience to kind of walk people through the solution and sometimes keep walking people through it. Walking them through the rationale, walking them through the benefits and versus other options, and having to do that on a repeat basis. I'm pretty impatient in that once I feel like we have a good way forward, then I want to make it happen. And so that's just hard for me. I just don't do it very well. Number 10, that might be my Achilles heel from now until.
Well, it's good that you have the self-awareness of that, right? Because then you know that you need to put some extra effort to get your solution across. But yeah, I mean, I think principle 10 is one that I can relate to what you're saying. It's one that to me doesn't also come naturally, but it has forced me to study it, practice it, refine it until I am proficient at it. Not a master or a guru, because I know I can improve, but at least the right level of proficiency for the position that I have, right? Or for the power needs that I have in that moment. And I think it all started in business school, at Kellogg, taking a class on power and influence. And that really opened up my eyes to the importance of that principle, which is why I am putting it in this framework. I want other people to also know that, hey, results are not enough. You need to also convince other people that your solution is the best. So, it's something that I guess we all need to get better and better at.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
All right. So what I'm going to do now, Cliff, I'm going to ask you a couple of random questions based on the 13 principles. And I'm going to do this with my future guests. I'm going to just pick a number and I'm going to ask a question based on the framework. So on principle number 2, aim outside your league. Can you share a time when you aimed high and achieved it? And then another time when you did not achieve it?
Now, this is a timely question here. I'm not sure if I'm doing this one enough. I was doing some career introspection back in December. And so I set up some time with a series of mentors that I have. And I wanted them to just help me hash through what I was thinking at the time, some of the dilemmas that I was having, what my desires are, at least maybe for this next season of work. And one of them basically told me, take a big swing, Cliff. Be a CEO. I'll help you out. Just go for it. The other one said, look, don't wait too late.
Yeah.
And then another one was like, look, I don't know. I'm just telling you right now, I will actually invest in you. So if you find something, I will invest with you.
Nice.
And so what was the common thread? They're basically saying, hey, aim outside your league, right? That's basically what they're saying. They're saying, don't be normal. Don't aspire to what is normal, which is kind of how you phrase it, right? Go big.
Yeah.
I would say, just an obvious non-achieve moment would be my first foray into entrepreneurship, which I alluded to earlier. At the same time, I felt like I learned so much about myself, right? That's actually your principle 6, right? And that, while it didn't quite transpire how I thought it would evolve, it was real value there. And it really created the foundation for really a lot of what we've been talking about today, at least on my personal journey. So I would say that one needs some work. I think, whatever this next thing is, it sounds like it really needs to be big. So I think I probably got to go back to the drawing board because I'm probably not thinking big enough.
Excellent. Well, I'll be rooting for you, man. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I mean, I think, for our audience, aiming outside your league is not just something that you do when you are applying to schools. It's something you do when you're thinking about what to do with your career. What's the next step? At some point in my career, that was joining McKinsey, which is, a highly reputable management consulting firm. And I could have said no to myself. I could have said, well, I don't know if, they would be interested in you, Alejandro, for these reasons. But I was like, heck no, I'm going to let them say no to me. I'm going to try. And I'm going to convince them that I am somebody that they want. And I did it and it worked, right? And that's, why I'm including this message here in the framework. Like sometimes we love to say no to ourselves. Oh, no, You're not good enough for this. Or no, don't waste your time trying that. But then, I wouldn't have applied to Kellogg at that point in my career. or Cornell. And, sometimes you don't check all the boxes, but if you have that, courage and faith and boldness, go for it.
Yes.
So this is something that, we all need to continue reminding ourselves. So it is a reminder, even for you, Cliff, in this point in your career, for our audience members, for myself, we always have to keep, aiming high, aiming outside our league, because it's just a natural force of, nature and physics to have our aim just kind of like go back to what's normal.
I think part of it is because we know what we know, and there's a lot of comfort in that. And there's discomfort in what you don't know, even though that actually is a body of knowledge that's much bigger than what you know. And so, it's actually an interesting phenomenon. So we have teenage girls. It's the same kind of thing where sometimes when they bump up against things that they don't know, they like freeze. And I have to remind them, well, you didn't know, for example, one of them plays tennis and she's actually pretty good. It's like, you didn't really know how to volley, 2 years ago. And now you're a killer at volleying, right? So like you're always expanding, but you have to your point, have to set that bar higher because you usually can do more than you think.
So is she better than you?
Now she is.
All right, man. Come on. Step it up.
I'm old, man. She's a monster. She plays, 4 or 5 times a week, and she doesn't even much like hitting with me at this point.
Yeah. All right. So on principle number 7, stick to your values. What personal values do you frequently use to make career or day-to-day decisions?
That's a good one too. So I like I said, I'm going to say it again. I love this framework. So I recently finished Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. Not sure if you read that one.
I have not.
But one of the exercises she encourages is for people to crystallize their personal values. She has you do a list, but then she really pushes you to distill it down to your top 2, which is pretty difficult to do. It's hard to get to 5, right?
Yeah.
And she wants you to get it down to top 2. But I complied. And so where I landed was faith as my number 1 and insights as my number 2. So I'm going to explain both of those. So faith, it actually means to be being others focused. It means integrity and truth. It means a sense of purpose, and it means justice. And then for insights, it means expertise. It means curiosity, and it means thoughtfulness. And so these are things I really value. And so how this plays out is when I'm evaluating opportunities as well as cultures or subcultures, what kind of lens am I looking through? So for example, do I feel a sense of purpose in this work?
Yeah.
Am I working with people who value truth and justice, right? Does this culture value competency? Because some cultures actually don't care if you're competent.
Yeah.
Does it encourage curiosity? Does it operate in a thoughtful, people-focused manner? And so these are kind of lenses where I'm looking at opportunities and life.
Yeah.
One of my career stops involved a leader who was very much self-absorbed and was the expert on everything. So not open and curious in most instances.
Uh-oh.
And I knew early on that it was a place I did not want to work for long.
Yeah.
And so after 2 years of plotting an escape, I made it out of there. But looking at through that lens, it was very clear like there was not an alignment there. At Northern Trust, there have been like several instances where, a false narrative was being advanced in the organization. And whenever that happens, I always feel obligated to speak truth to power. And so I put my head on the chopping block a few times.
Yeah, good for you.
But, I've had several colleagues comment, afterwards that they were appreciated that I spoke up and then I stuck my neck out on the issues. And so those are a couple of examples of kind of how I do that in life.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing, Cliff. Not only is it great that you know what your top 2 values are, because, like I say, you need to understand them and understand how the priority works, right? Like which ones are at the top, which ones are more, secondary. But those are also, great values to have. So that's awesome.
So good. Can I flip the script? Can I ask you a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good. So like mentorship and sponsorship has been a big part of my story. Can you talk a little bit about the role you see them playing for professionals today? I think this probably is your number 11, which is build your village.
Yes. Cliff, this is huge, man. This is why it's, principle 11. In my career, I've had moments where I felt that I had a well-rounded group of mentors, a sponsor, and moments when it wasn't quite as solid. And I can tell you that the moments where I've had those, I felt more empowered. I felt I could do, bolder, riskier moves. I felt like somebody had my back, like somebody can, give me the right advice. So the difference between having them and not having them, I think is huge, right? It doesn't have to be a huge board of mentors, but it could be 2 or 3 people. But if they are giving you the right advice, such as, hey, aim higher, go big, do this, don't go that way. That is valuable information that could prevent you from wasting years in your career, right? Because you could make the wrong move due to wrong advice, or actually no advice. You just thought that it was the right move, but you didn't have somebody that is, from an external perspective, giving you greater insights and helping you think through it. So to me, that is why, Principle 11 is key, right? Principle 11 is not just only about building a network that can help you get from point A to point B in your career, but I also talk about the importance of mentors, coaches, and sponsors. Now, what I want to say is that, having a sponsor, that's a pretty unique thing. You don't always have that, but when you do, again, it's a powerful thing. So whatever it is that, you as an audience member can do to make sure you, recruit and have the right, handful of mentors, perhaps one sponsor, that will really accelerate your growth in your career. Because when you have a sponsor who is basically, an executive in your company, who is in an influential position, this person is advocating for you. So imagine if you are up for a promotion and you're competing versus 3 or 4 other highly qualified peers, perhaps from the same team or other parts of the company. Let's assume you're all top performers, you're all doing great, you all have great reputations, but one of them has a sponsor who is influential to the people that are going to make the decision. And this sponsor is going to say, hey, listen, I would go for Joe for these 3 reasons. He's really awesome. He's done this. This is his track record. I believe he can do this and that for a company. But there's nobody speaking to that decision maker about the other 3 candidates. That includes you in this example. Guess what? There's a likelihood that Joe is going to get the promotion, not you. So that is why I think, having a sponsor is a game changer. Having mentors is a must. And coaches come as you need them, right? Maybe you need some coaching on whatever, public speaking, or you need some coaching on dealing with difficult relationships. Those are things that are temporary, because as you go through the coaching, you acquire those skills. Eventually, you don't need the coaching anymore. That's fine.
Right.
But the mentors and the sponsors, those are things that you should aspire to have across your career. And looking back at my own career, Cliff, I can say I have not had those consistently across my career. And many things that are here in this framework are a product of introspection and figuring out, okay, what could I have done better? And that's probably one of the areas that I could have done better, which is why I am advising young professionals to make sure that they put the right emphasis on principle number 11.
Yes, that's good stuff. I couldn't agree more. That scenario with you just gave with having someone have other people speak up for them. It happened to me at Northern Trust, where someone else kind of had the end and they got the role,
Really?
which was fine. It all worked out because I think I ended up getting the right role. But
yes. So Cliff, each of our audience members is on their journey to success, trying to get to their champagne, that professional stage we desire and work towards, that is worth celebrating once you get to. What advice can you offer to them so that they can have a more efficient drive to success?
All right. Well, first off, if you're listening to this particular episode, it must mean that champagne is coming soon.
Amen.
But seriously, the most important thing you can do to me is own your journey. We talked a little bit about this. You have more control than you think, and you can do more than you can imagine. A good friend and I were talking about her next potential career move, and I was sensing she had great hesitation and concern about the prospect of moving on from where she was, even though she's not happy where she is. And so I then asked her a question, which I've now adopted myself. And that question was, what might it look like if you let go of your self-imposed constraints? It's a very powerful question. See, many times we create a narrative around how life and career should transpire. The sequence of things, the players involved, the measure of success. But we will be well served to hold these stories very, very lightly. they're usually false narratives, and they usually detract from achieving genuine success. Mm-hmm. There are many paths to destination, and oftentimes we learn things during the journey that might make us rethink our originally imagined destination. I mean, you gave your B school example. It's a great example, right? Most often it is in the doing that you find revelation, but we get caught up in the majesty of destiny and destination and winning and achievement and perfection. And all too many times we miss the notion that the journey may really be the purpose of it all. Yeah. So I would say own your journey.
And enjoy it, right? Because it's a long process, and you got to enjoy every phase of it. But that's powerful advice, man. I appreciate it. Cliff Goins IV, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing how these powerful principles have helped you in your own journey. It was really fun learning more about your road to success.
Cheers. Thanks.
And everybody, you can contact Cliff via LinkedIn. And remember, everyone, you can and must take action to start unlocking the power of the 13 principles in your life. Let's meet again in the next episode. I have another inspiring guest for you. Thanks for joining me, and cheers to a more efficient journey on your road to Champagne. Hey, if you missed Series 1, I encourage you to listen to it. It explains the foundational principles we are discussing in Series 2. Like this episode, please share it with your friends, colleagues, and classmates, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to visit roadtochampagne.com and join our mailing list, and to follow Road to Champagne on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.